Uh, okay, we're live. So, today I want to talk about generalizing. Like, is generalizing bad? Typically, that is how we see it. Like, typically, we say it in a way where you don't want to be known as someone who generalizes. It's kind of a negative connotation. But is it really that bad? That's what I want to talk about now. Um, in my opinion, it's not always bad. It's not necessarily bad, but it is lazy. It's very lazy. Basically, when you generalize, you are kind of skipping or ignoring the specifics. Like you have a group of people or a type of situation, and you're like, well, I've often seen this, so it's probably like this again. Like you're kind of looking back at what you already know, and like what has already happened so many times before, like what the norm is, instead of looking at the situation in front of you or the person in front of you, right? And you can generalize towards an age group or a gender or a profession, right? So it is kind of lazy because it's like a shortcut. You don't want to think in specifics, so you just generalizing. That's basically what it is. Yeah, so generalizing is lazy, but I don't think it's that bad because it does serve a purpose. Like in a normal conversation, you can generalize to make a point, right? Like as a side point. So, for example, me having spent a lot of time in Asia, there are, and by Asia I mean mainly Japan and Taiwan. There are certain trends, certain things that I've seen happen a lot, like things that I never saw in Denmark, but that I saw with almost everyone in Japan or Taiwan. Whether it's a kind of politeness or how they interpret sarcasm or hierarchy, authority. Like there are some tendencies that I noticed. So, I would generalize based on that experience, based on the things that I saw. Um, and then what I realized is that some people, when they hear that, they will they will not feel good because they feel like a generalization is saying it's always like this. It can never be any other way. And I think that's a misunderstanding. Generalizing simply means that very often, in most cases, for the most part, this is how it is. And God, this is how I think it is. Of course, nothing is written in stone, but like that is generalizing. And we all do it, right? Like we generalize when we say that. I mean, it could be anything like someone has an occupational hazard, like someone who works as a teacher always wants to correct people in their private lives. Like it's just, maybe they want to preach or like they want to educate because it is so tied in with what they do every day. Or a psychologist, they might have a hard time stop analyzing people, or they don't. But like there is reason to believe that that would be true. So that generalization is basically just like, yeah, this is probably the case a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. Right? And that's what a generalization is. So it is a good way if you want to get the overall picture of something. Like if you have some demographic, then you say, yeah, this happens very often within this demographic or this kind of situation. Right? And I believe this because we have more things in common than things that set us apart. Right? So like, there's a lot of things we all do, and some things are kind of something men do more than women, and women do more than men, and young people do more than old people. It's okay to say that young people are full of energy because that's positive, right? And sometimes it's not true, but it's often true, right? There's something biological, something with phases of life. You want to go out and prove yourself or try things out, like that's okay. But as soon as we say something slightly negative or non-flattering, then we tend to get, called, I don't know, like, I think there's called something like an age racist. They go ageism. Like there's a kind of discrimination towards a certain age group. Um, or it could be anything really, like, if we say anything that's negative, then it's seen as an attack, right? Or it's seen as like insane ignorance. But sometimes it is really what we know, like, from experience. So that's what I'll say about that. It's good for understanding a group or a trend in the population or worldwide, but it's bad if you want to understand the individual, right? So if you're talking to someone and that person, let's say it's some millionaire, right? But he doesn't like to spend money on expensive stuff, which, might be the norm, but he's different, then you need to look at him as, the way he is, and not just as how most millionaires are, how you believe they are. So even though he might be the exception, you still have to look at him like for what he is. I mean, I know it sounds very basic, but it's like generalizing is good for talking about trends, but it's bad for the individual. Right? It's pretty rare that anyone fits like 100% within that stereotyping, that given their occupation or gender or age or social status, like it's pretty rare that they fit everything. Some things they'll fit, right? Like in some ways, I am very stereotypical Danish, right? Believing in like the welfare state and a secular society and stuff like that. That is so Danish. Again, you could be like, oh, Danish people are so secular, which by the way I take as a compliment. But anyway, like that would be a generalization, and it would be a correct one. Right? So yeah. So they could be true, but sometimes they're not. And that's the thing. And I think like this is where a lot of people go wrong. It's that they make it black or white. Right? Either they're like generalizing hardcore, like refusing to see the individual, or they are saying, oh, it's all about the individual. Right? Because that's also bad. I mean, it's bad if you want to understand the truth. Like, I've had some talks with people, and they would refuse to ever generalizing about a nationality or gender or anything. Like, they would just be like, well, it depends on the person. And I'm like, yeah, the person is unique. The person has things that other people might not have. But he or she is also doing things that other people are doing. And not everything we do is so special. Like, that's the thing. And I think that sometimes some people, they feel very uncomfortable acknowledging that actually we are so similar. Like, and that actually your culture, your religion, the way you're brought up, etc., like those factors surrounding you, they really shaped you. Now, then, of course, there's the whole nature versus nurture debate. I'm not going to get into that now too deep. But there is this thing where you, like, you talk to some people and they just say, it's all relative. It all depends on the individual. And I'm like, well, a person from that country is likely to have this belief, someone from, I don't know, Indonesia is likely to be a Muslim, right? For example, and someone from Spain is, let's say, something else, not religion. Someone from Spain is highly likely to appreciate relaxing more than working, right? Some of it's stereotyping. The lazy Spanish person or Spaniard, like that is, yeah, it's not very nice. But having lived there, I'm like, yeah, there is something to it, right? Like there is some truth to that idea that Spanish people just want to party and want to relax, again, sleep in and that kind of stuff. Want to enjoy the moment instead of thinking about the future. And then when I was in Japan, I saw the opposite. I rarely saw someone being like, yeah, don't worry about the consequences. Let's just have fun. Like, I almost never saw that. Like, most people in Japan were very like responsible and sensible, really thinking like long-term consequences, either to their, I don't know, reputation or to their social circle or like anything. They would always be so cautious in everything they did. So on that background, I can say that, yeah, that's generally how it is. Like, that is very common. If I meet someone who's not like that, I'll acknowledge it. I'll be like, oh, okay, wow, you're different. But when it's the case, it is the case. Right? And people tend to, like I just said, people tend to be either like complete generalists, like in the sense that they just generalize hardcore, or they're the opposite. And they're like, no, everybody's special and it depends on the person. It's like, I don't know, it seems very inflexible. That Yeah. All right. So where was I? Um, then there's the thing of having first-hand experience versus stereotypes, or like the common idea, because some ideas you have just because you heard them, right? You watched them in movies, or you heard your parents talk about it when you grew up. It's just kind of the idea that's being floated, and that people from a certain country act this way. And could also be positive. Could also be like, all black people are good dancers. That's positive, but it's definitely not true. You can see some who are not. Now, in this case, I can't really say anything, right? It's just, I know there's a stereotype, a positive one. I know there's like an idea, but I don't know if it's true. So that's the thing. I wouldn't be able to talk about that from first-hand experience. So when you generalize, do you do it from a stereotype? Stereotype also includes like media coverage, right? Because it's like limited scope what they cover. Or is it based on your own experience, right? Like, that's also a big one, because the way I see it, someone is allowed to generalize in the pursuit of truth, and like, um, what is real, establishing what reality is. In that endeavor, I think they are allowed to generalize when they have something from personal experience, right? Like when they've seen enough. If they lived in a country for many years, they can speak with confidence. Like, they probably know more or less how it is, at least in some regards. So, yeah. So I speak about some things that I know about, like, that I'm either educated or have experience with. And then other things where I only have an idea, I try to be more like, well, I heard it's like this, but I don't really know. I don't really have an expert opinion, so whatever. Yeah. But then, of course, some people want to be so confident that they'll talk about anything that they've heard with great confidence, as if it's totally true. Like, yeah, I know it. Oh, how do you know it? Oh, everybody knows. Oh, everybody knows. So what you're saying actually is that everybody is saying the same shit. It's like those generalizations, those stereotypes going around, but no one has actually bothered to find out, by going, I don't know, to live in another country or something like that. Now, I know today I'm a little bit all over the place. Like, I feel like this is a very fluid conversation. It's hard to be specific, but I'm just like trying to look at the different tendencies, and like how we generalize and why we do it, and how some people respond and stuff like that. Like, so that's like first-hand experience versus stereotypes. And generally thinking, I think that, generally speaking, I think that stereotypes are lazy. Like, you don't really get very far with them. But then there's anecdotes versus statistics, and this one is like, so yeah, first-hand experience is good, but the more limited it is, the less valid or valuable your opinion is, in a way. Like, your sample pool, the things you've seen, have maybe been based on very few experiences. Whereas if you know some statistics, it's not just you. Oh shit! What just happened there? A microphone fell down. Eh? So like this is kind of how it is. This is how I see it. Um, like I can have a few bad experiences, like with a certain demographic, but that's not enough for me to say, oh, this happens all the time, or this will happen to you too. It's not enough, right? Because I might just have been unlucky. Maybe I was just one of the few who happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and then, some bad shit happened. Like, yeah, that's the thing. But then you can look at statistics, whether it's about, it could be about anything. I have to be careful because there are certain topics that YouTube don't allow me to talk about, which actually sucks. But well, the point is, statistics don't lie. Sure, they're narrow in their scope, but they don't lie. But your feelings, they will lie because you are going to remember things that were important to you. And if you had a very bad or very good experience with something, it's going to stand out, and you are going to remember that as being real. And because it was so strong, because it was so, it left a mark, right? Then you will remember it, and that can cause you to generalize, either positively or negatively, but it will make you generalize. And yeah, that's the whole thing about feelings, You have a feeling, you feel that it's true, right? Even though you don't really know. So what I try to do is, when I have some opinion about something, I'm like, okay, so I've had some experiences, but how do I really know it's true? And then I think to myself, is it important that I'm informed, or can I just have my impression? And if I find that it's important, then I try to do some research, like, go online, or maybe talk to some friends, talk to some other people, so I get like some anecdotes, but I also get some statistics. Because one of the worst things, again, when you want to understand the world, is to just base something on your own experiences if they're very few. Again, if you had a lot of experiences, then you can, have a more accurate picture of reality. But if you only had a few experiences, and yet you're so confident that, oh yeah, this is right for sure, because I feel it in my bones, I know it, then you are delusional, right? So that's kind of the thing. Yeah, I think that's all I'll talk about for now. It's a little bit messy today, and I think there are some problems with the sound once or twice. So that sucks. Yeah, but this was interesting, talking about generalizing, because I think it's not a very bad thing, but it is, like I said, it's lazy. It's not the way you wanna think in general. Like, it's in general, that's almost like a paradox. It's something that is not very specific, so it's hard to be enlightened or highly informed if you are always generalizing. But it's okay for establishing certain trends, like forgetting the gist of something is okay. So I think that people who freak out when they hear generalization, they need to stop shouting racist, sexist, xenophobe, etc. Because those terms, they have a certain connotation, as if the other person is like malicious. Worst case scenario, most of the time they're just ignorant, and let's not confuse ignorance with malice. I think that's also another common mistake. All right, I'm all over the place today, so I'm gonna take off now, and thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for listening. I'll see you soon. Bye.